There's an age-old debate in audio. What is more accurate? Are speakers more accurate or are headphones more accurate? A lot of people say you can't do mastering on headphones, and a lot of people say you can't do mixing on headphones because you can't judge the reverb and the spatial elements you need. Speakers for that and headphones are only good to double check the bass. Why do people say that? Well, people often say headphones are good to double check the bass because the bass in their room isn't very accurate and it's more accurate on headphones. Why is this? Well, bass frequencies are the most difficult frequencies to treat in a room. And if you listen to the room that I'm in right now, you can hear that it sounds horrible. If I clap my hands, you can hear that the room is very untreated. It doesn't sound very good at all, despite the fact that I've got a mattress there and there. I've got to assemble a bed here. There's actually 2 mattresses in this room, but it still sounds absolutely terrible. And so if I put a pair of speakers up here and try and work on that, it's going to be absolutely a disaster. It's going to be like getting the best watchmaker in the world. Let's just say you go to Switzerland, you go to Geneva or somewhere, and you get the best watchmaker, and then you put him in the back of a car at night and like is trying to assemble a watch, like driving around. It's not going to happen. He's not going to be able to assemble the watch, despite the fact that he's the best watchmaker in the world. So it's not about your skill. It's not about being elitist and saying you need this fancy equipment or something. It's just a hard reality that if your room isn't accurate, then you're not going to be able to get decent results if you're working on speakers. You can kind of cheat that slightly by getting Auratone, or I've got a course on how to make small seal speakers, and you can move those speakers closer to you, not that close, but closer, and then you can exclude more of the room in virtue of them simply being closer to you, so there's more direct signal and less diffuse signal. That's one thing that you can do. But generally speaking, people don't just want to work on Auratones which don't have that much bass, like quite close to them. They want to have more of a full range sound. How do you judge the bass frequencies and stuff like that? Well, then people say, okay, well, I'll spend a bit of money on treating my room. So they go out and buy some foam. They spend €1,000 and they fill their room with foam. Foam doesn't do anything for the frequencies below, like, I don't know, like 600 hertz or something. It basically does nothing at all. And if it's thin foam, it doesn't do anything from the frequencies below 1,000, like 1K. So you've wasted your money because above 1K, you've killed your room and it just sounds dead and lifeless. And below 1K, it just sounds like a bathroom. And so people clap their hands. They're like, oh, well, there's like, the reverb is less. Yeah, but it's not actually done anything in terms of being able to judge the bass, being able to judge the lower mids. It's not done anything. So then people say, okay, well, I'm going to rip all this foam off my wall, all the spray foam, which is like nasty chemicals. And now you've got all blobs of weird spray foam on your walls that you have to scrape off or whatever. And then they go to the shop again, spend more money and buy a whole bunch of fancy, expensive broadband absorbers, which have just essentially just got rock wool in them and they're about that thick. And then so now they've improved their situation from having it sound like a bathroom below 1K. It now sounds like a bathroom below I don't know, 400 hertz or something like this. So they've improved their situation slightly, but now below 400 hertz, or especially below 300 hertz, is still like a bathroom. And so the bass is completely loose and you can't really judge your lower mids. So that's improved the situation slightly, but it's basically not done that much and you've spent a load of money in the process. So really, what you can do is you can get some acoustic panels, and I recommend doing some DIY acoustic panels, not that difficult, and get an alright sounding room so you can work on speakers and listen to music on speakers. But if you actually want to sensibly work critically and assess the actual tonal balance and actually hear what's going on in your mix, then the only way to do that is to have as little room interactions as possible. And how do you do that? Well, you have to spend either 100 grand on acoustic treatment and doing like all of the properly designed room within a room construction, maybe even a floating floor and all this kind of stuff to isolate the room so you've got no background noise and from outside the cars driving past, and you have like an expansion ceiling and non-parallel walls, and you've got like a meter of rock wall somewhere at the back of the room and all stuff like this, right? And it's going to cost like 100 grand, let's say. You can do that, but that's a bit elitist. Or you can just get a pair of headphones and exclude the room. Now, if you've excluded the room with the headphones, now the room is no longer a problem. And so that is the fastest way to get accurate monitoring, is to get the room out of the equation. And I recommend headphones for that very purpose. And I made a video a while back talking about headphones. And it's had hundreds of thousands of views at this point, and it's had many comments. And in that video, I just go through and say, I listened to those headphones, these Focal headphones, they were a disaster. I wanted to vomit when I listened to them, they were so bad. I listened to these Audicy headphones, they just sound overhyped in the bass and the high frequencies. And I listened to these hi-fi headphones and they sound all kind of filtered and weird. And I listened to these beyerdynamic headphones and they had all sorts of high frequency resonant peak. I can't remember the exact frequency, 10K or something. It sounded absolutely awful. I listened to these headphones and those headphones. I just went through this video, I was going through all of the headphones I listened to and I was just saying they're all crap. And the only headphones that at the end, which despite the fact they still have problems, they're a bit bass shy and stuff like this, at the end of the video I say the only headphones I actually get on with are the Sennheiser HD 660S, 650 and 600. Now I think the 600 are, they're the cheapest of the bunch and they are really very good headphones indeed. Now, they're not without their problems. They're a bit bass shy. There's a few problems with them, that they have higher harmonic distortion if you turn them up too loud, especially if you then use corrective EQ to boost up that bass artificially. You're just going to get loads of distortion in the low frequency, and it's not going to be the most accurate monitoring experience. But if you just take stock Sennheiser HD600 headphones or 660S headphones, plug them in to the inbuilt hole on your Mac Mini or MacBook Pro or something and listen at a reasonable volume, that's a much better monitoring situation than 95% of people have access to in the audio industry. And a lot of people don't like that information because there's people who like to be gatekeepery and they want to kind of say, no, you need speakers and you need this expensive room, and then people go through this kind of like rabbit hole of throwing thousands and thousands of dollars or euros on treating their room and improving their room and getting better speakers and all this stuff, and they need massive speakers, full range, and people just get lost in that. When if you just get a pair of decent headphones like the Sennheiser ones and plug it in, done. You've got a better monitoring situation than 95% of people in the audio industry. And that statistic is a fact directly from the National Department of Statistics of AP Mastering. Now, I went through that video and a lot of people commented in the comments, they were saying, oh, this guy's just grumpy, nothing makes him happy. Well, I actually said, well, these headphones are just fine. A lot of people said, oh, but he's an idiot because he didn't try the Neumann headphones. Or, sorry if you think I'm an idiot because I didn't listen to every single pair of headphones in existence. But one of the headphones that I kept getting come up in the comments were OLLO Audio, because they're kind of disruptors in the market, right? They're doing something a bit different, and they are they're making a product which is kind of moderately priced, and it's a very high quality critical listening headphone. And so I was very curious about those headphones. So that was one of the pieces of advice that I took on board from the comments. I've got to check out these headphones. And so I spoke to the founder of OLLO Audio, his name's Rock, and we had a phone call. And it was a really nice guy. And we actually had a phone call for over an hour. It was a really long phone call. And he was telling me all sorts of amazing stuff that I'd only heard from him. No one else is talking about this stuff. The stuff that this guy knows is not common knowledge, because normally when people talk about headphones on like forums and stuff, people talk about, yes, the shimmering high frequencies are like the moist leaves on a frosty morning, or people describe it with stupid language. But he was like, yeah, the reason why we don't use planar magnetic drivers, we use dynamic drivers, is because the resonances and the size of the diaphragm such that blah 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 has this effect and blah 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 technical blah 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 thing. And he was explaining all of these technical things and talking about the ISO standard blah blah blah, measuring stuff and dummy heads, and why it's got a more expensive dummy head than the Neumann one, and all this stuff. He was going into like the vast details about this really cool stuff, and I actually took notes of that conversation. It was like, wow, I'd learned more from that one phone call with Rock than I'd learned about headphones in the whole of my career. He really knows his stuff. And after that phone call, he sent me out a pair of the OLLO Audio X1 headphones. And I actually featured them in one of my videos, that video with the $4,000 headphone amplifier, and the benchmark one. and they performed really well. Now, you can't teach old dogs new tricks, or whatever the expression is, and so I've been using Sennheiser headphones, specifically the HD 660S, for many years since they came out. The day that they came out, actually rode my bike down to Tauentzienstraße in Berlin, and went directly to the Sennheiser flagship store there, bought them cash the day that they came out for full retail, and I've been using them since, and I think they're great. And so switching to another pair of headphones is quite difficult for me, so I didn't switch to the X1 for that reason. But when I was listening to them, they are different from the Sennheisers, but they are very accurate. And so I thought that they were a very accurate, good sounding headphone, and if I wasn't already using the Sennheiser headphones and I wanted a more accurate sounding headphone, I would definitely consider the OLLO X1 as one of the only contenders that I've come across, apart from you've got the Stax SR009 or whatever it's called, which are like, I don't know, thousands. I can't remember how many thousands that they cost. They're okay. They're not 100% like I get on with these more than those really expensive ones. But if you weren't into the Sennheisers and you didn't want to spend thousands and thousands on the Stax and stuff like this, well, the OLLO Audio X1 are one of the only pairs of headphones that I've found that fill that need. Everything else is like just awful. Like the Focal head, awful. The Odyssey headphones, super overhyped in the bass and high frequency, just awful. The Hi-Fi Man stuff, just not accurate. I can just go through. They're just, none of them were working. But the OLLO Audio ones are very respectful indeed. But he sent me these headphones. I didn't switch to them because I just can't move away from the Sennheiser headphones at this point. And they gathered a bit of dust on the sideboard. I put them back in the box, and they just stayed in the box for like almost a year at this point. And now I'm moving country, and I'm sorting everything out, going through everything, and I found the box the other day. And I emailed Rock, and I was like, hey man, I'm a bit disappointed that I didn't do more with these headphones. I did do it in that one video. It got quite a few views and people saw the headphones and stuff, but I mean, I didn't really do that much with the headphones. And it was like, well, I was like, shall I do a giveaway? And he was like, okay, yeah, sure, do a giveaway. So I'm going to do a giveaway of these headphones, and these are the headphones right here. This is a box of almost new OLLO Audio X1 headphones. If you want to get these headphones, all you need to do is send me an email to iwantolloheadphones@proton.me. Now, I'm not going to repeat that. I'm not going to write that on the screen, because I'm going to get hundreds, if not maybe thousands of people email me and want those headphones. So I'm going to do a filter. Firstly, this video, if you've watched it this far, it's 14 minutes long. And so that's already going to filter 70% of the people out. Secondly, me just saying it once is going to make it more difficult for people to know exactly what that email address is. Anyone who emails my main normal business address, you'll be disqualified from getting these headphones. Do not email my main normal business address on my website. Email me at the email address that I said previously. And then, if you email me and keep it a short but sweet email of why you think you will like these headphones, and if you have watched a lot of my content, supported me by buying a plugin or something like that, just do a concise email. The shorter the better. The longer it is, the less likely I am to read it. The email that I like the most, just arbitrarily going off my just feeling of it, within the next 24 hours, I'll say, okay, great, send me your address and your phone number, and I'll send you the headphones. The only caveat is I'm not going to pay your postage and packaging. So if you live in Australia or Japan, then I'm not going to pay $200 to get the headphones to you. So if you live in Spain, it's going to be a $5. If you live in Germany, it's going to be 15 quid. If you live in Australia, it's probably going to, I don't know how much it's going to be, but it's going to be $100 or more. Bear that in mind, you pay the postage and packaging, but apart from that, you can just like Revolut me or just send me by bank transfer or PayPal, whatever the postage and packaging cost, and then they're yours. but this is going to have to happen pretty quick because I'm flying on Wednesday.